welcome everybody. So we are super excited to have Rich Makadok from Purdue join us today. And let me just briefly intro Rich, and if then we can go very brief introductions around the room. So Rich is from Purdue, is really a theory builder. We've talked about how to build good theories. So this is an excellent opportunity to hone those skills and ask any questions from Rich about how to good theories, what the ingredients are. And also wanting to introduce Rich because he is an award-winning author of theory. So multiple awards, Academy of Management Review's Best Paper Award, and other strategy field awards, and also serves as associate editor for Academy of Management Review, a theory journal, as well as editorial board of SMJ, and also served previously at Emory. So we're excited to have Rich join. So let's do quick intros around the room before we get started. And we prepared some questions for you. So
thanks, Riitta, and thank you very much for the very kind words in your introduction. I appreciate it.
So Chris, do you want to get started on brief introductions who we are?
Sure. My name is Christopher Flowers. I'm a first-year PhD in the Management Science and Engineering department. My primary research interests are around how identity and experience shape the ways that people work at an individual level, but then also at the team and group level.
Okay, sounds interesting.
Shahab, do you want to go next?
Sure. So hi, Rich. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Shahab Musavi. I'm now a first-year PhD student in Management Science and Engineering, working with Riitta, and I come from a background effectively in computer science. So my main goal is applying the tools from computer science, mainly machine learning, deep learning, that I've been working on before, to problems within the social sciences, specifically within strategy, culture, and ethics within corporations.
Okay, sounds interesting too.
Han Cheng, how about you?
Yeah, hello. My name is Han Chen. I'm a fourth-year PhD in computer science here at Stanford. Was doing a minor in management science and engineering. So I'm very interested in computational social science, human-computer interaction, and natural language processing. I'm interested in using computational tools to understand human behaviors, and my current research is focused on science of science or scientific innovation, as well as collaboration related to the future of work.
Very cool.
And more future of work, Adrian.
Hi, I'm Adrian Baer. I'm a first year in MS&E working with the Work Technology and Organizations group. I'm interested in the tension between innovation and historical knowledge or indigenous wisdom. When do we look back and when do we look forward?
Okay, sounds cool.
Thank you. Konika.
Of course, I know Konika.
Yes, I am a final year student at STVP. My primary research interest is how institutions impact entrepreneurship.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
And last but not least, Vajiha.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So I'm a second year PhD student in the Management Science and Engineering department. I'm primarily interested in understanding the impact of digital technologies on businesses and society. And before this, I was both an undergraduate and a master's student at MIT, where I was focused on understanding technology policy, particularly pertaining to cybersecurity and privacy.
Okay.
Great. And so Rich, first we want to hear about your background. Looks super interesting. Is that a video game you're playing right now?
No, it's just a video loop that I downloaded from YouTube and added my my ID to.
Awesome. Well, welcome. We're so excited to have you here today to talk about theory. Before that, my first question, and then I really want to open it up for questions from the students, but my first question is, talk to us about the beginning. So Rich, as a doctoral student, your early career choices and what happened then. You know, a little bit of a background we would love to hear.
Yeah, that kid was a mess. You really don't want to know too much about it. because really I was quite confused. I really didn't have a clear picture of what research was about, or what I wanted to do, or what I wanted to be, and didn't really figure out to be honest, the kind of research I wanted to do until I was actually in my second job. So don't follow my example. My dissertation is a terrible one, and would not something I'm embarrassed about, to be honest. But I think what might be relevant for you guys in terms of understanding where I'm coming from is that I did make this transition when I was in my second job, where I had been up to that point, basically mining results out of my dissertation data set, which was on the mutual fund industry. And I was not having much fun at it. I just really didn't enjoy doing that kind of work. I was, it was okay. But I reached a point, I think, when I had one paper that actually had won an award. It won the 1997 Best Paper Award for the BPS division, what we now call the STR division. And that paper got rejected at SMJ after 4 rounds of review over a 5-year period. And it deserved to get rejected because honestly, the reviewers did find some serious issues in it. So I don't bear any grudges about that. And I never tried to do anything else with that paper once I realized the flaws in it. But it left me feeling like, if I'm working this hard, trying to make this work, and I'm not getting anywhere, I'm feeling frustrated, and I'm not having fun doing the kind of work that I would like to be doing, then why am I doing this, right? Because honestly, what the fundamental problem I think I boxed myself into as a doctoral student is that I chose a dissertation that was what I thought the people around me would like, right? It was a topic or an approach that I thought, my advisor and the others in my department would like, would be interested in, and it wasn't what motivated me. And so, in this career, you really need to be self-motivated because there are long stretches of time between getting any feedback at all on your work. And most of that feedback is negative. And so you really need to be able to persist and keep your motivation up despite the lack of feedback, the long stretches without feedback, and the fact that most of the feedback you will get is negative. And so, I was really in quite a depth of despair. And around that time, I happened to see Birger Wernerfeld give a presentation, research presentation. He was, by that time, had moved over to fully becoming a marketing guy. He was no longer really doing strategy research. And so he was invited to talk at by the marketing group at Emory. And, of course, I knew his work in strategy. And I showed up at the talk, and Birger was doing this paper, which had this little conceptual model, basically, right? And I thought, and he had, it was called, I think the version of the paper that he presented was called Organizational Languages. And it was like a simple model of, a couple of agents in a organization, and they have some communication channels. And I could see that, if you tweak the model a little bit, it could deal with this phenomenon and go, produce these kinds of results. Or if you tweaked it in another direction, it could produce a different set of results. And he seemed to be having fun with it. And I wasn't having fun with what I was doing. And I thought, yeah, that looks like fun. I would like to do that kind of research. And I literally dropped all of my research projects at that point. I had ongoing empirical projects, and I just walked away from them because I realized, if I don't find a way to make this job enjoyable, I'm going to quit anyway. And I think got pretty close to that. I hired a career counselor to help me think through alternative careers. I thought seriously about becoming a truck driver because, I like driving and like seeing scenery go by on the highway. Fortunately, that talk by Birger Warnerfeld intervened, and I thought, I really want to become more of a theorist, and because I'm the kind of person who I just enjoy solving puzzles. It's just my nature. I like to solve puzzles, and that's what doing theory is like. It's like I get to create and solve my own puzzles. And I find it fun to just be able to create my own little universe, if you will, and see what I can make it do. See what kind of effects I can make it demonstrate. And that's, that does kind of set me apart from the typical researcher. I think most people are more, when you guys went around and you introduced yourself, each of you introduced yourselves, I didn't hear what I heard was, I'm interested in phenomenon A, I'm interested in phenomenon B, I'm interested in phenomenon C. Nobody said, I'm interested in theory, right? And I think most people who go into this career do so because they are interested in the phenomenon. And I'm kind of the unusual odd duck who, okay, for me, phenomena are interesting in the sense that they can help me distinguish between theories, not interesting intrinsically on their own, right? And I think, a lot of people approach it the opposite way, that they're interested in phenomena primarily, and they're not that interested in theory, except insofar as it might shed some light on their phenomenon that they're, compellingly interested in, right? So I know when I'm talking to a group of researchers, for the most part, I'm talking to people who are more interested in phenomena than in theory.
So if I may add quickly something, I think you are too modest. Your mutual funds paper, SMJ1, is actually super interesting. It's on evolutionary theory, highly recommended reading, although you may not like it. The rest of us interested in innovation love it. So,
okay.
So go read it. So I want to ask the first question, and then I want to hear from the students, but tell us, what is theory?
Oh, okay. So I think theory is an answer to a question that begins with the words why or how, basically. And I think, I was reading actually just last night an article in the Guardian newspaper online, and it was about, it was asking the question, have we reached the end of theory? And basically saying, in many fields of study, do we any longer need theory? Because we have these, we have big data, we have machine learning techniques, and if all we want to do is basically, predict the phenomena, we can, do that in a theory-free way using these machine learning techniques. And the trade-off with that, yes, you can, right? You can, and you can do a better job of predicting phenomena with sophisticated computational methods than I can ever do with a theory, right? But what you can't do is open up the black box of that machine learning model and look inside at the various weights attached to all the different neural networks and understand what's going on, right? You can get those weights and stuff like that, but it's not going to make any sense to us as human beings. So what I realized from reading that article is theory is about us. Theory is about us and our cognitive limitations, right? If all I need to do is predict something, I don't need theory, right? But if I want to be able to say, I kind of understand something, I need theory because I can't do what the machine learning algorithms are doing, right? I have this limited human cognitive capacity. I have a limited amount of working memory in my brain. I have a limited amount of cognitive bandwidth. And so I need the simplification that theory provides, right? Because I'm made of meat. I'm not made of silicon. And so for me to be able to say I've got any kind of grasp of a phenomenon, I need the simplification that theory provides. And so in that sense, theory is really about us and our limitations, as much as, if not more than, it is about the phenomenon we're theorizing about. So I would say theory isn't, to answer your question, Riitta, I would say theory is an answer to theory is an answer to a question that begins with why or how, and it's needed because we're limited in our ability to to think about the world in ways that computational machine learning algorithms are not.
This almost begs Shahab and Hancheng to, as CS experts, to jump in. What are your thoughts, Shahab and Hancheng, or what questions do you have?
Well, I just start off by saying that I'm new to the field and have previously, again, just been within CS. So I'm always used to just focusing on exactly what you mentioned, the parameters, just looking at how these networks are working, what they're learning, and how that's going to end up helping us in our predictions, which has kind of made the transition, admittedly not as smooth as one would desire, into the field and developing theory. I guess one question I would have myself is that coming from that background, I understand that in all spaces now, applications of, again, like machine learning are quite popular, and everybody's looking at, oh, how can we apply these tools? What will be the future with these? Do you see a place for that coming in, not just machine learning, but more broadly, even like methods of causal inference, and bring them into trying to build theories that incorporate those? Or do you believe that we should maintain them, as you mentioned, to the realm of just humans and simplifying the thought process of our limited memory capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure power tools will be helpful, at the end of the day, though, the output has to be something that a human being can understand, right? The process that we use to get there can be enhanced, I think, by these power tools. They may point out patterns, but we've got to, at the end of the day, be able to interpret those patterns. What do they mean? And interpret them in a way that we can wrap our heads around. And so, yeah, I'm sure that whatever power tools are out there will be applied not only in empirics, but in theory development. For myself, for example, the power tool that I typically use is formal analytical modeling. I use Mathematica software to help me develop those models and to make sure I don't make mistakes in the math. And Kanika's smiling because she's seen me do it. And so sure, I'm sure that people will use whatever tools are available. At the end of the day, though, your reader is a human being. Your editor and your reviewers are human beings, and whatever insights you derive from whatever methods you use for developing your theory have to be understandable and interpretable by a human being. So, and I found the link to that article in The Guardian, and I dropped it in the chat window there, in case you're interested. It's called, Are we witnessing the dawn of post-theory science? Interesting question.
Cool. How timely. Kanika, you had a question. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so you were saying that human beings should be able to understand the process behind a phenomena. So can we also say that a theory not only explains the phenomena, but can also predict the next phenomena yet to happen, or prescribe something that we can understand? Is that correct understanding?
I would say those are all possible outcomes of theory. Explanation, interpretation, prediction, prescription can all be possible outcomes of a theory. they don't necessarily all have to, not every theory has to have all of those outcomes. I guess the more of them you can develop, the more complete your theory is, perhaps, or the more uses it can be put to, at least, right? Because each of those represents a different purpose, a different use that you can put theory to. So I'm not sure that every theory needs to have all of those elements, all of those purposes fulfilled. So I'm not sure if I'm fully answering your question.
I think you were Han Cheng and then Christopher.
Oh yes, so some hands are up. Yes.
Yeah. So I have a question on the relationship between phenomena and theory, because as mentioned, I come from a purely engineering background, and all the stuff that I do is dealing with different kinds of phenomena, and especially in computer science, you start with an existing data set or existing task, and then you will try to get some meaningful insights about that data set, or you try to improve your algorithms with a very, very well-defined target in your head when you're conducting the research. So I myself have never done anything related to theory, but theory to me, it feels like it's much more abstract, and I assume that in the very beginning, it might be hard to have a clear answer in mind. What would be the end product or the end theory look like when you start doing the research? So I'm very curious about like when you're doing theory work, how would you start thinking about the problem, and how would you progress? Would you start with some, say, more concrete phenomena to play with, and then you start to have a better idea of the theory, or it is the other approach that you maybe start from start from existing theory and try to find there some gaps, and then think more beyond that? I'm not sure what would be the what's your way of doing theory-driven work?
Right. So, like you said, in engineering, there is some predefined purpose for the product or the system that you're producing, right? So, for example, if I'm creating a search engine, right, the purpose would be to help somebody find the information that they have in mind, right? And so if I create a search engine algorithm, right, the performance metric is how well do those search results match up with what the person was wanting to get, right? So that's the objective function, if you will. For theory, I'm not sure what the objective function is, right? It's not quite so straightforward as that. Now, with an engineering product like a search engine, you don't really care that much about how it produces these results, right? What you want is for the results to match what the user wants, right? How it gets there, not that much of a problem. I think for me as a theorist, it's the how that really matters to me, right? I'm more concerned about understanding the essence of what's going on, even if I don't get even if I'm not able to predict everything right in detail, than I am about getting every result exactly right. I'm interested in the insight. Let me put it this way. Yeah.
Rich, could you say that we're interested also in the underlying mechanisms?
Yes, right. The mechanism, right? So part of what theory is about is distinguishing between different mechanisms, right? Trying to figure out, well, like I said, I mean, that's the why question, right? A causal mechanism is an answer to the question why, right? But let me get to your actual question, Heng Cheng, which was about where do I start? And it's been in different places on different projects. So I don't I don't really have that clear of a, of a standard modus operandi. For example, my 2009 AMR paper with Russ Koff began in a lunch conversation at a taco joint off campus. And, we were talking about how there were all these new emerging governance forms that people were observing, some of which I was aware of and many of which I was not. And Russ commented that how transaction cost theory was still kind of stuck in this make versus buy framework and was missing out on a lot of this governance innovation, right? And I don't know, I just had this connection that went off in my brain to a paper I had read many years earlier, an economics paper by Holmstrom and Milgram, where what they did was they were trying to understand why different elements of the make versus buy decision tended to go together, right? Why, when you're governing something through the market, the assets are owned by the agent, the incentives are strong, and there's very little authority over the agent, right? Whereas when you're producing something in a hierarchy, it's just the opposite on all three of those dimensions, right? The assets are owned by the principal exercises a lot of authority over the agent, and the incentives are weak, right? And so this was a paper about kind of why all those three dimensions seem to go together pretty often, right? And it occurred to me that what Russ was saying was that maybe those three dimensions have become uncoupled in some way, right? That they've gotten decoupled in some cases, in some situations. And I thought, that we could maybe tweak that model to understand this broader range of governance forms that are emerging today. And so that one did start with a conversation about a phenomenon, not one that I was really that familiar with, but where the paper emerged was in my making a connection between that phenomenon and this modeling technique I had seen years earlier. A different paper of mine, the paper with David Ross on what we call adverse competitor replacement. That began actually with a kind of a pure theory challenge, right? David and I were sitting together having breakfast at the Academy of Management conference, and we liked the idea of working together because I admired his work, he admired my work, but we didn't really have a topic. And I'm of course a big fan of Murray Davis's "That's Interesting" paper, right? Which I'm sure that you guys have read. And so I said, okay, what Murray Davis advises you to do is basically to look for the conventional wisdom and see where that conventional wisdom might be violated, right? So we started talking about, well, what's the conventional wisdom in the field of strategy? Well, we thought, well, maybe the biggest conventional wisdom that there is that competitive advantage is good for performance, right? I mean, I think most people would not think to question that kind of underlying assumption in the strategy field. The competitive advantage is going to be good for a firm's performance, right? And so we posed the question, well, where might that not be true? Under what circumstances might competitive advantage actually backfire and be bad for performance? And that led us to think about kind of odd and unusual circumstances where, in general, yes, competitive advantage will be good for a firm's performance, but there may be some odd outlying cases where competitive advantage is actually bad for performance. And we created kind of a little list of 5 or 6 of these conceptual situations where where a competitive advantage might backfire. Konica is familiar with one of these because we had her doing some work on one of them, and then we kind of dropped the project, and I hope we will eventually pick it up again. But it was the idea that a competitor who's been outcompeted may be more willing to take risks to catch up, and may leapfrog ahead of the leader, right? As a result of being more willing to take those risks. We never did finish that paper, but one of the other ones on our list was this idea of adverse competitor replacement, which was that if you are so strong in your competitive advantage that you force a weak competitor out of business, that will create some space in the market, and a stronger competitor might come in to replace that weak competitor, right? And you might live to regret having forced the weak competitor out of the market, right? And that was the basis of that adverse competitor replacement paper, right? It was just in the abstract. I mean, this was all in the abstract, was thinking about, what are circumstances where the conventional wisdom just may completely break down. And the challenge with that paper was, because it was an abstract idea, right? It was not grounded in phenomena, right? The paper with Russ Koff was grounded in these existing phenomena, and we needed, this Holmstrom and Milgram paper to help me understand why these new phenomena were emerging. Here, David and I were not beginning with a phenomenon. We were beginning with an abstract idea of competitive advantage backfiring under these kind of abstract circumstances. So we had to actually find an example of where this had happened to at least, be able to have some basic face validity or plausibility to it. And that was a big part of that project, was doing the library research needed to just find at least one example where that had actually happened. And we found maybe 2 or 3 at the end of the day, but that was a challenge. So anyway, so Hang Cheng, these projects can start from an abstract theoretical idea, or they can start from a phenomenon, or somewhere else entirely. Like I've got I have these 2 papers on this idea that there's 4 theories of profit, and it's interesting to see how they combine, right? We know a lot about their main effects. We don't know that much about their joint and interaction effects and that sort of thing, right? So that's again one of these abstract ideas, right? That I know that there are these 4 mechanisms for creating profit. I don't know much about how they combine. Let me try to combine them and see what I come up with, right? And so I have 2 papers along those lines, and I'm working on a 3rd now. But and other ideas come from conversations with people,
like this one. So Rich, can I just remind students that the Davis 1971 piece, what makes research interesting, brings up this idea that when you challenge the field's underlying assumptions that nobody questions, that's where interesting theory comes from. So it's very consistent with what you're saying.
Yes, right, exactly. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Davis's That's Interesting paper. Yes.
Absolutely. So I want to get to Christopher's and Adrian's questions.
Sure. So my question is around the outputs of theoretical contributions. So in your paper about making theoretical contributions in strategic management, you wrote that prediction about what will happen is not prescription of what you want to happen. And so in that direction, I understand that. But is it fair to say that you need predictions before you can make prescriptions, because you need to have those prescriptions based on something?
That's reasonable, I would say. Yeah, I would say if I'm going to tell you what you should do, I should probably know, I should probably have some reason to believe that what you're going to do is going to produce the results that you want. I think that makes sense.
Okay, and then so with that, when you're looking to make a prediction versus the prescription, when you distinguish between those, is that more a matter of the question that you're asking and starting at that level, or does that distinction matter more when you look at just what your results are and then you're kind of experimenting what to do with that?
Yeah, so I guess you're pressing me on this. I guess I would say a prescription is a prediction plus a purpose, right? It's, you know, I've got to have a goal that I'm trying to achieve, right? So if I have a, you know, if my goal is to make this car faster, then I'll prescribe, you know, one type of engine to put in it. If my goal is to make the car more fuel efficient, I might predict, you know, prescribe a different type of engine for it, right? So both of them are predictions, but they're predictions plus different goals, right? So different prescriptions can arise from the same predictive apparatus, depending upon the different goal I'm trying to achieve. Now, I mean, you know, I guess that kind of gets kind of glossed over in, you know, in the fields where we normally think of prescription, like medicine, right? We literally take prescriptions from our doctors to the pharmacy and swallow pills and stuff like that. Because, you know, we kind of take for granted that the goal is always to get this person back to health or help them survive or help them improve their quality of life or something like that. But even there, you know, I mean, I guess doctors might have different goals for different patients, and that would lead to different prescriptions, right? Because, you know, maybe older people couldn't tolerate certain treatments that younger people could, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great, super interesting. Could I move on to Adrian's question in the interest of time?
So I'm wondering, given the proliferation of research, like it's becoming, I think, kind of overwhelming to even see all the scholarship that's out there. And given that, I'm wondering if like seeing the conventional assumptions or the common wisdom is becoming harder over time, or how do you see theory responding to there just being so much research?
Yeah, I agree. You know, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the field of strategy was a much smaller field. I like to joke that you know, if I look at SMJ, the list of editors that they have, that's a longer list now than the editorial board used to be when I was coming in, right? Back then when they had only, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 editors. Now there's literally dozens of, you know, when I came into this field, there were 1 or 2 or 3 editors of SMJ and a few dozen, you know, editorial board members. Now there's dozens of editors and hundreds of editorial board members, right? And I remember when the division changed its name and abbreviation from BPS to STR. They also simultaneously did a revamp of the mission statement for the division. And I recall as they read this thing, it was like just a long list of, you know, lots of different topics, and we don't want to offend anybody by leaving anything out. And so it was like, you know, I don't know if you ever watched the US president give a State of the Union address, right? The way it usually works is, you know, if there's 12 departments in the bureaucracy, you know, each of them gets, you know, 5 minutes of the State of the Union address for the president to say, you know, what he hopes to achieve in that area of the government. And so it was like the mission statement for the division kind of read like a State of the Union address. I was joking. But because it, you know, it used to be that we didn't really need that much of a statement of purpose for the field, because the purpose was a very general one, right? We want to understand you know, all the factors that contribute to overall organizational performance, right? And these days that's become so fragmented and so balkanized, if you will, that it requires this lengthy list of different aspects. So I guess what I'm saying is, in terms of identifying conventional wisdom, you know, at this point, just as research has become fragmented and balkanized, so has the conventional wisdom, right? Different subgroups of researchers within the strategy field may have different and perhaps conflicting understandings of what the conventional wisdom is. That's where you maybe these days have to be a little bit more careful in framing a paper to, you know, to make sure that you're taking into account the conventional wisdom of the correct sub-audience that you're aiming at.
So that's interesting. I want to add or end on an optimistic note. So what are the opportunities for doctoral students as they are thinking about theory as a possible path for their dissertations? What are the new opportunities, new exciting directions that are not well plowed yet?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the purpose that we had in mind for writing this essay, was to, you know, enable the doctoral student to take a look at your area of interest, whatever that phenomenon is that you're particularly interested in, and have a checklist of things to see, okay, what can I tweak in this in our understanding of this phenomenon? What aspects of our understanding of this phenomenon may be incorrect or incomplete, or you know, just maybe more conditional, where the answers are different in different circumstances. And so by going through, you know, kind of those levers of the theorizing process, you have an opportunity to make fine-grained contributions to theory in your area of expertise. So let's take, you know, this idea of, I don't know, I can't, one of you all wanted to study, you know, computational, well, sorry, Shahab, what was it? It was computational. I'll pick on Shahab here.
Sorry, can you please repeat your question?
Yeah, so what just remind me what I remember you said you had a particularly interesting research phenomenon.
Yeah, so right now what I'm working on effectively very broadly is just bringing my computational background into the field and applying it here. But right now what we're working in, as Riitta mentioned, is right now applying it to studying culture and ethics within the workplace,
right.
And using like textual analysis tools to do that.
Okay, so what you're doing is you're kind of shifting what we called in the paper the mode of theorizing, right, to a more computational mode. But you could say, okay, with respect to culture and ethics, right, what else could I do, right? Could I tweak the level of analysis? Is culture, you know, a culture and ethics, are they an organizational phenomenon? Are they a subunit phenomenon? Are they an individual phenomenon? Are they an industry phenomenon, right? Because, you know, many industries have codes of ethics or cultures, if you will. You could change the causal mechanisms, right? So you could take a look at ethics and culture. We might normally think of those as social phenomena, but maybe in some sense they're really economic phenomena, or they're psychological phenomena, or perhaps even in some organizations they're operational phenomena. So, you know, and you could change the constructs, change the variables. You might be looking at, you know, trying to explain, ordinarily we might be looking at trying to explain ethical lapses, for example, but maybe you want to look at something different. Maybe you want to look at, you know, mentoring people in ethical behaviors, right? So how do organizations pass on their ethics, right? That sort of thing. So what I'm saying is that, you know, the future is as bright as it ever was, theory-wise, but it's helpful to be able to distinguish, you know, with some level of precision what your theoretical contribution is, right? And you can take any phenomenon and apply these different levers of the theorizing process to it and say, okay, what's been in this literature, what's been missing? Has everybody been focused on the same level of analysis? Has everybody been focused on the same constructor variable? Has everybody been focused on variable X as the outcome variable rather than as a independent variable? Have we ignored some certain important boundary conditions, right? And so it's my hope that this little taxonomy that we provide in this essay will be able to, you take this and you apply it to any given phenomenon that'll enable you to see kind of the blank spots in that canvas, right? Where you can say, okay, this part of the canvas on culture and ethics has been very well painted and very thorough, but over here it's very sketchy, right? People have only looked at a certain sub-range of causal mechanisms, right? They haven't considered all these other causal mechanisms, or they've looked at these constructs and variables, not these others, right? So by applying this taxonomy to whatever phenomenon you're interested in, it's my hope that you'll be able to spot the blank parts of the canvas that you can fill in.
Cool. And it strikes me this is a great taxonomy also for just simply making a lit review and organizing the field. So on this optimistic note, let's give Rich a big round of applause. It was such a pleasure talking to you. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Okay, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you very much, Riitta.